So that was a really tough time just in my basketball career, just because it's the first time I had been out for that kind of extended period of time. And obviously, we all know what happened that year. We went to the Final Four.
Greetings and salutations and welcome to this special Find the Balance Friday edition of the Odd Coaches Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Keith Adams, and with me today is somebody extremely special to me. The man I'd like to say is the only non-Adams player in the Adams phone book. This is Mr. John Vaughn. John, how are you today, sir? And thank you for joining us.
What's going on, Coach? I'm excited. Thanks for having me. We've been working on this for a while, so I'm excited to do this interview with you. I just appreciate you always showing me love and reminding me that I'm the only non-player that you have saved in your phone. So I appreciate that.
Yes, indeed. So fans, a little bit background about John Vaughn, or JV as we like to call him. He played at Laurel High School in Prince George's County, Maryland. Again, must be something in the water. Played at George Mason for 4 years. He was a second team All-CAA player, and he's currently in real estate. But John, I want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about your career, your high school career, your college career, and anything post-grad. Go in any direction you want, sir.
Yeah, no, I'll start with Laurel. Coach Keith Cottrell really, he really invested a lot of time, just not only for my on the court development, but also off the court development. And although I drove him crazy with the two-sport football thing, I
do remember.
He always was in my corner, those rides to practices, summer camps. He would always just take time and just, ask me about how I was doing personally. Coming from a single parent background, he really didn't have to. He really, took time away from his personal life to make sure I had the things I needed, got to the places I needed to go. That really stuck with me. I think that gave me the confidence of somebody actually believing in me and also not wanting to let that person down. That's really what drove me to work as hard as I did in the gym. Although I did play a little reckless on the football field, I did always want to make sure that I put in that extra work in the gym because I felt like he made a personal sacrifice to put me in the best situation possible. To get me as much exposure as possible on the AAU circuit, things of that nature. And, although, we probably didn't have the best record that we would have wanted during our time there, we had some peaks there where, things went really well. And it definitely, when it came to just the fundamentals of shooting, he had a huge impact on that. I mean, he would take time off, on his off days, on Saturdays and Sundays, and he would open up the gym for me, and we would just go in there and shoot for hours. And I think that really helped me become as good of a shooter as I became. And then, I started getting attention in my sophomore year. It's ironic. Coach Caputo was the first person that found me. He was the first guy that talked to me on the recruiting trail for George Mason. Now he's at GW. So Mason was really the first school that really got in touch with me my sophomore year and going into my sophomore year, the summertime.
Gotta love the hoop group. Shout out to the hoop group.
Hoop group out in New Jersey. That again, another confidence booster. I had the opportunity to learn and from some of the past guys at Laurel, mainly, my guy, Terrence Bradley, who was there. I played with him 1 year on varsity. And then just moving forward, I tell people all the time, people ask me all the time, who's the best player you played against and things of that nature. And I always tell them the best player I've ever played against is a guy named Sterling Ledbetter. He was just ultra talented. It was just, it was wild. So, being able to play with guys, like him, Warren and Jerome and, Brandon and Tim Chilestri when he decided to come over from High Point, and my football buddy DeMarcus White. I mean, he was a football guy, but him and I were like linked. He's like, all right, you do this football thing with me, I'll come over and do this basketball thing with you. So just I'm leaving out some guys, but just being able to have a good camaraderie like that, guys supporting and being able to play with friends, really made it a good environment. And once I got going into my senior year, I didn't want the whole where I'm going to school thing to overshadow what our team had going on and things of that nature. So I knew internally that I wanted to make a decision before my senior year started. And I think one of the things that I wish I could have done a little different in my recruiting process is when I had came to a decision, was to talk with Coach Contreras a little more in depth than I did. So the last three schools that it came down to was St. Joe's, Fordham, and Mason. Those are the schools that I narrowed it down to. And at the time, Fordham had, Derek Wittenberg there, and he's really close with Coach Contreras. So he really wanted me to come to Fordham, for sure. And then St. Joe's, obviously, Coach Martelli was there. I got real close with Monty Ross. And then they were coming off the Jameer Nelson, Delonte West era. So naturally, I would have been a good fit there. And they were recruiting me and a guy named Abdullah Jallo at the same time to kind of slide in as the replacements there. But Mason really, and I would say out of the three, it was St. Joe's or Mason for sure. But Mason, what really attracted me to them was, for some reason, they really, really, I didn't play any defense in high school. So for some reason, they saw something and they really, really wanted me. But then when I started to hear that there's a chance that Fowler and Campbell was going to go, that's what really cranked up my attention. Like, somebody that obviously I know is very good and someone that I know, potentially going to the same school, that gave me a layer of comfort because it would have been my first time outside of my comfort zone of playing with people. I personally thought, I personally thought Fowler was going to Providence. I thought he was going to the Big East. So when he told me that, he was interested in Mason, it kind of shocked me, to be honest. But when he told me he had serious interest, that's when my interest really, really ramped up. And it got to the point where Fowler and I had a conversation and it was like, all right, if you go, I'm going. Or if you go, it was like that kind of thing. And I had already went on an unofficial visit and he was scheduled for his official visit coming up. And I don't remember the day. I believe it was a Thursday. But I remember, so technically it was an early Friday morning. He called me about 4 a.m. on his visit at Mason. And I answered the phone for some crazy reason. And his words were, I'm coming. Like, it's done. Like, I'm coming. So I said, all right, I'll let Coach Courtney, Coach L, Coach Cherry, Coach Conkle, Coach Computer, I'll let them know tomorrow I'm coming. Hung up the phone. The next day, I believe it was Coach Courtney that I let know that I was coming. Because when him and Coach L came to my mom's house, they did a number on her. There's no doubt about it. So she felt very comfortable with me going there with them. And yeah, I mean, when I got to school, it was a unique situation because I came in with Follerin, Will Thomas, Jordan Carter. And I would say if you rated or ranked our class, I was probably ranked third behind Follerin being one. He was the most – Follerin and Will like 1A, but let's just say Follerin and Will 1 and 2 or Will and Fowler 1 and 2. They'll see this and they'll give me a hard time in the chat. It's all good. And then I was probably the third rank and Jordan was the fourth rank because Jordan was kind of a late signee. But there was an opportunity. There was an opening there for 2 out of the 4 of us to essentially play immediately. And obviously Fowler and I playing the same position. There was a spot open because they had guys leave, they had guys transfer. And I just remember, Coach L basically sitting Gabe Norwood, Fowler, and myself down. And basically, long story short, one of you going to start, one of you going to back up the starter, and one of you going to get in spot time if it's a blowout or, there's crazy foul trouble. And the emphasis was definitely put on the defensive end. So when I left that meeting saying, hearing that, you really got to improve your defense in order to play, I was a little concerned because in high school,
you played zone.
We played 2-3 zone. So you want to talk about passing lanes, cherry picking, all that stuff. I'm like, what you mean? Stay between your man and the ball, and you got to rotate. You got to have one in the paint and all this and all of that. So I really, really just focused and locked in on that portion of the ball. And, I was fortunate enough to where I put myself in a position to where, eventually during my freshman year, I was able to start, had a pretty good freshman year. I felt like I got robbed from rookie of the year because the person that won rookie of the year was like a 20-year-old. All that stuff like that. Guy's named Antoine Agudio. Not that he wasn't a good player, but he was 20. So, and then, with that, again, doing it with somebody like Fowler and seeing his progression, because a lot of people don't know that, he wasn't playing much early on.
No. And the same defensive conversation that you talked about, I have inside knowledge of, we actually do have to play defense.
Yeah.
And John, I'm glad you're mentioning this to young players because that transition's real. And it's one of the reasons why today I think a lot of colleges go to the portal instead of to the high school route, because I really don't have time to explain all of this to you. And I got 2 years left on my contract and I can't have these meetings. I got to go win now.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure we'll get into it a little later. Basketball is a business. Okay. So the coaches are in the business of winning and the business of winning now. And, Coach L emphasized that to us. And, Following, we all call him Shaq. It's so weird for him to call him following. He started catching on at the end of the year, and then he started, getting, production, more rhythm, etc. And then the summertime, him and I were just working our tails off, and it actually got real competitive, unannounced between him and I, because we would do the summer school, and then we would have open gym with the team and things like that. But in between classes and the open gym, there was this thing called nap time. So, we would go to sleep, and it was really like, hey, every man for themselves. If your alarm go off and you show up on time, cool. If not, too bad. And there was a few times where I was a little late to the thing, which I'm like, man, we in the same room, same house. Why you wake me up? But, I learned so much from, seeing how he grinded and got to where he was. That summer, we just had a great summer together. And I felt like I was probably at the peak of my quote unquote powers as a player. I was as complete of a player as I had ever been up until that point, and as I ever was post injury. And obviously, for me, the first day of school going into my sophomore year, doing open gym, I just a routine rebound, came down, knee popped in and out very quickly. And it's interesting because when it happened, I didn't think too much of it. I knew I couldn't put weight on it. And we go over to the training facility. And Dr. Gonzalez was there. He wasn't our normal doctor. Dr. Patron was, I think, coming back from family vacation, because this is in August. So it's at that time of the year when people are taking their family vacations. He just wrapped me up in the, the ace bandage that you see all the time, says a knee sprain, 2 weeks, you'll be back, blah, blah, blah. So that was on a Friday. No, that was on a Monday. And then by Friday later that week, going into Monday the following week, I still couldn't put any pressure on my knee. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm 19 years old. You know what I mean? If I sprain my ankle, twist my knee or something, I should bounce back in a week. And it took 2 or 3 x-rays, and it took 2 MRIs. They actually had to give me the MRI where they dyed it to finally diagnose that I had an ACL. And I knew something was wrong when, we just went on our regular visit with Dr. Patron, and they asked my mom to come to this appointment. And Dr. Patron was talking to Coach L and Coach Courtney and them before they spoke with me. And Coach L had came out of the office with a look on his face I had never seen before. And when I saw that look, I knew something was wrong before they even got to me. So when they told me I was out, obviously, I was crushed. And I just remember my mom walking me back to my dorm, and I remember hitting the elevator, and it's crazy. Following was coming off the elevator, maybe picking up some food or something like that. And he had this look like they had already knew, like the coaches had even already told him before I even got there. And we just we didn't say anything to each other. We just kind of had this look, and you can tell that he was like very concerned and, disappointed for sure. So that was a really tough time just in my basketball career, just because it's the first time I had been out for that kind of extended period of time. And obviously we all know what happened that year. We went to the Final Four, and Coach L had came to me. And, one day I was just a little down in spirits, just because, just like, man, like you work so hard all your life to put yourself in a position to be on the stage like this. And you want to be out there with your guys and things of that nature. And he sat and talked to me in the hotel room in Crystal City. And he just asked me, how I was doing and things like that. And I talked to him, and he came up with this brilliant idea. He goes, well, how can we make you feel more a part of it? And I said, let me dress. Just let me put on the warm up, the uniform. I had been cleared to run and all that. Just let me go through layup lines. And I'll just sit on the bench as if I just don't play. You know what I mean? But I felt more a part of the team once, I was able to just go out and do warm-ups, do layups with them. You run out of the tunnel and you just get that sensation of, just the crowd and the big game and things of that nature. Even though I knew I wasn't going to play, in those moments, like I felt a part of the team, and that really kind of changed just my outlook on that whole situation. And I didn't even think about the injury because I was so lasered and focused in on the game. I'm sitting there like, when is the coach going to call my number or whatnot?
And one of the things we used to joke about is JV's on TV more than anybody, and he's not even playing. So I love that. I so love that. Yeah. And I'm glad you gave our audience that context because it really was like, and we knew about the injury. It really was like, hey, man, JV's there too. And I mean, every shot you found a way in. And I don't know if that was by design or accident or happenstance, but that was awesome, man.
Nah, I mean, it was just genuine happiness for my guys. We were such a unique team that year. And, I've never told Following this. I mentioned it on a different interview that we did for Mason, but throughout our career, he inspired me. Like, just I knew how good he was and things of that nature. And you could see the work that he was putting in. Like, I drew inspiration from one to essentially hold my end of the bargain, to him and I's agreement, and also just not, let him down when they needed me in games. And, I think that we were roommates, on the road and all that stuff like that. So I just think that aspect, when you see it now in the basketball culture, the media always tries to create this narrative, oh, whose team is it? Oh, it's not this person's team. And they create some kind of combativeness going back and forth. And, I look at it as, I came in with a guy where, in the Mo County and Montgomery County Rays, we were always kind of rated in the top 5 of shooting guards in the area. And when we decided to go to school together, I mean, my high school coach didn't think it was going to work. And a lot of people didn't. I didn't even think about it. I just thought I'm going to school with my buddy. He's going to make me better because I know he's a good player. And I know if I'm not on my game, then I'm going to get embarrassed. So that's kind of how I took it. And, throughout that whole run, like he would always, talk with me just to always just try to make me feel a part of it. And even to this day, he does. So I always really appreciated that with them. And then coming back, finally getting healthy and coming back the following year, I kind of had a shift in mentality. I would say pre-injury, I was just like this bulldog. Like I was just this animal that just, if I smelled any type of blood, I was coming after you. To where post-injury, I knew they needed me, but I was like, I kind of don't want to mess things up because they just came off this great year. So I really struggled with that mentally, to the point where Coach L set up sessions with me with Dr. Bob Rotella. I had personal individual sessions with him to try to get over that hump. And then that explained a little bit of my inconsistency sometimes throughout the years. But, we went on to, win the CAA championship in '08. That was great. I remember after cutting down the nets, Coach L gave me a big hug, and he said he was proud of me and he was happiest for me on the teams. I had a chance now to go back to the tournament as a player. So that really, really meant a lot to me. And then obviously when those guys left, Fowler and Will and them, there's a little bit of a piece of me that left with them as well. But I had guys my last year, Daryl, that I got really close with, Andre Smith, those guys, we had a really good year the following year. We lost in the title game again, unfortunately, to VCU, but we did go to the NIT, so that was great. My high school and college days, they were some of the best times in my life for sure.
Well, we'll definitely pick that up in segment 3, but in our next segment, fans, John gave me the privilege of reading, and he's going to provide some commentary on the Find the Balance book, and I'm looking forward to hearing his thoughts. We'll be right back on the Odd Coaches podcast.
The CKA SAVE Project is an industry leader in advocating for student-athlete, academic, and athletic needs. Through academic and athletic enrichment, the CKA SAVE Project is on the forefront of the issues facing 21st century student-athletes. As student-athletes continue to struggle to find a better balance between academic and athletic success, the CKA SAVE Project offers academic and athletic services to support student-athlete academic success, including academic skills assessment, academic and athletic consulting, academic monitoring, academic and athletic workshops. For more information or to schedule a free consultation, contact Dr. Keith Adams by email at cka@ckasaveproject.org.
Welcome back to the Odd Coaches podcast in segment 2. I'd like to hear John's thoughts on our Find the Balance book project. I know he lived a lot of it, and I'm sure as he read it, some things came up. But John, 1, thank you for reviewing the project, and 2, please share any thoughts you have.
Yeah, no, first of all, congratulations, Dr. Adams. It is fantastic to see someone that I've known for such a long time write a book. And especially one that, personally that I can relate to. I think the most unique thing that you did was you wrote a book that related to all of your players that you coach with. So you have that expertise knowledge. You're not, speaking from watching on TV or anything like that. You were in the trenches with the players, and your players, they love playing for you so much. They were able to share stories with you of their high times in college or their low times and what they needed and things of that nature. So that really comes through in the book. And I just think it's so important, especially now, the importance of the student athlete part as a whole, not just your focus on the basketball court and trying to perfect your craft, but also your focus in the classroom and trying to perfect the higher education. And, it's extremely important to try to find the reason why there's that breakdown. I came from the same background, was like, all I want to do is play sports. What time is class over? I don't really, things of that nature. And obviously, as I was that kid, 100%. I was definitely that kid looking at the clock like, all right, 5 minutes left in class, so I can go do my extracurricular activities and things of that nature. But as I got older and a little more mature and towards the, my junior, senior in school, and now as a young adult, I realized how important it is to give the same effort and focus and motivation. That was a word that you used a lot in the book, was the motivation for the higher learning. You get an opportunity to go to, in a lot of cases, to go to school for free. And nowadays, a lot of people don't know this. A lot of times when you're going to school and you get your 4-year bachelor's, inquire about coming back and getting, your master's or your doctorate on the school's dime. Mm-hmm. I didn't. That was something that I wish I had known and at least inquired about and see if I can take advantage of that. thing. And so, but a lot of student athletes don't know that they potentially have that leverage and things of that nature. So I just think it's extremely important to get your message out, to understand that there is a need to try to fill in that gap, especially for, young people from our community and come from situations that, they're not entirely educated on that portion of how much leverage, they can gain by having an extremely strong education. It's not just the education part, it's also the people that you meet and the relationships that you build, how they'll catapult you into the business or whatever you want to do post playing career, whenever it ends, whether it's, high school, college, or, semi-pro, pro, overseas, whatever the case is. I just think you have a very important message, especially now in this time where social media is just taking over and it's essentially almost filling in that gap. And it's very difficult for professors and teachers now to really command the attention of, young people. So I think, emphasize the importance of it and trying to understand what that breakdown is, as well as the way, we teach, transform it as well to try to, relate more to this generation's, idea of learning for sure.
Man, I really appreciate that. And fans, in segment 3, JV and I are going to have some fun because we're going to swap some lives and tell some stories. We'll be right back on the Odd Coaches podcast.
The reviews are in for Dr. Keith Adams' book, Finding the Balance, My Personal Journey to Academic and Athletic Success. College professor and student-athlete academic expert Dr. Lisa Rubin said, "There is nothing out there like this book, so I do hope people will pay attention and give it a read." Former George Mason standout Fowler and Campbell said, "Consider this book an opportunity to work directly with Dr. Adams, just like I did. I assure you that there will be something you can take away that will be useful to you throughout your personal journey." Ryan Waite, a recent college graduate who is a software engineer, said, "I like how the book is based on research, which makes it good for general students as well as student athletes." The book serves as both a memoir to Dr. Adams' 30-year academic and athletic career, as well as an instructional guide to assist student athletes, parents, coaches, teachers, and administrators navigate through the challenges of finding a better balance between academic and athletic success. The book includes over 15 personal stories and anecdotes from Dr. Adams, along with numerous former players and colleagues from a variety of sports and endeavors. You can order your copy at www.ckasaveproject.org. From the main page, simply click CKA Save Project Services and order the Find the Balance book. For more information, contact Dr. Keith Adams by email at cka@ckasaveproject.org.
Welcome back to the Odd Coaches podcast. In segment 3, we're just going to continue to talk about our unique relationship. So fans, it's not a joke that John is the only non-Adams player in my phone book, because his high school coach, Keith Couture, and I go back a long way, and we used to practice and scrimmage against each other every year because, as John said in segment 1, they only played zone. So he was always our first scrimmage because I need my zone work. Hey, Keith, let's get in. Sure. And that's how we got it. And John and Fowler got to catch up. And I actually have a very grainy picture of those two together that I still haven't found, but I do have it. And one of the reasons why I really just kind of rooted for JV is, as you can see, fans, he's got a vibe. He comes from an educational background. His mom was a teacher, and there's just a lot of commonalities. So, John, in your opinion, why do you think you and I hit it off? That's what I thought. But what's your thoughts on that? Because it is unique that I would promote you just as much as I would promote Fowler. And I'm like, hey, Jay, you got to get him this. We got to get him all this, all that in the summertime. But from the quote kid perspective, how was it from your lens?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think our personalities are kind of relatively similar, but I think the main point is, hey, listen, yeah, we played zone, but when we played you, I was getting 32.
Yes, you were.
That. So, and I just think it really developed, based off of how Fowler and I's relationship developed, and you probably asked questions to him about me, and he I'm assuming he gave, some good feedback and things of that nature. And then I think, Fowler and I were talking about this actually a few weeks ago. I think there was a time where there was a little bit of rumblings that maybe, I may have been thinking about coming to Springbrook. He brought that up. I said, I think so, but I'm not completely sure. But we just ended up at the same spots because Fowler and I always found each other on the AAU circuit. So obviously where he was, you was. So, I was giving you baskets at Springbrook. I was giving you baskets in the AAU thing. Now, obviously, Fowler was getting his baskets as well. But I just think, between you and Contreras' relationship, it just kind of trickled down. And every time we saw each other, man, it was just always, nah, man. I mean, I always, it's you. Obviously, Coach Contreras is my coach, but you and Coach Farello, I mean, you guys.
Much love to Glenn. Much love.
If I could have played for anyone else outside of Coach Contreras, definitely been you two guys. And yeah, it's just evolved from there. And I think, I thought it was a little weird as well when I was like, man, this guy's really like, going to bat for me like I'm just one of his players. And I just always appreciated that, man. So I'm just glad that we're here today. And, I'm just very grateful that, we're still able to, have these conversations and kind of take a trip down memory lane a little bit.
Well, JV, can you share some advice for high school and or college student athletes? Because your lens is different now. You've done a little coaching on the high school level. You're around college basketball a lot. Our conversations have evolved in terms of our evaluation of talent. And I just think your insight could be really beneficial as we navigate this new era of college athletics. So what are your thoughts or advice?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that I would give is to any players in any sport, soak up as much information as you can from each coach that you encounter, because each coach has a different experience and different, just view of how things are done, and there's not too much information that you can take in. That's one of the things that if I can go back and do it again, I would definitely try to soak up as much information as possible. Secondly, the one thing you have to always remember is you got to believe in yourself. You always have to believe in yourself first and foremost. That doesn't mean that it's always going to be easy, rosy, and go the way that you want. And you cannot be afraid of adversity. Adversity builds your story so that when you get to that mountaintop, you can look back on how you got there and truly appreciate what you have. I mean, we live in a society now where things are almost given instantly. So then when you face a little bit of adversity, you're like, well, this is not how it's supposed to be, whatever like that. It's not being afraid to take on adversity to build your story. And then also, like Coach L told me, one of the stories that he told his players when I was there that I really took to heart was he always told us, when you're on campus, don't walk around campus with your head down, hoodie, hats low, hoodies on, earphones in, and not speaking to people. Speak to everyone, say hello, ask a question, things of that nature. Build your social skills because you're going to eventually need them when you get out into the real world and you start doing business and marketing and things like that. So I would say, don't be afraid, to just go out and just say hello to the 5 people you don't know a day. Because what that is doing is that it's preparing you for when you go into a corporate event or a room full of people that don't necessarily know you, to work the room is what they call it. I mean, you can put me in a room anywhere.
Yes, you can.
I'm out of there with, 10, 15 phone numbers and following up. So, sports is a business. And I would encourage kids to treat it as such, but don't get so lost in the business that you forget about evolving as a person, because that is just as important. And there's not a quote unquote easier time to be in business than there is now with the social media and things of that nature. Having those unique skill set can take you a long way. And then also, you don't need 100 people around you. Yeah, don't be a blood supply for those mosquitoes. Find you a core group of people that you can trust without a shadow of a doubt and evolve together. One of the things about LeBron that I admire so much that you're now starting to see trickle down more and more is he had a core group of guys. That doesn't mean he didn't have friends, other places and things of that nature, because he does, but he had a core group of guys that he could trust without a shadow of a doubt, and they all evolved and developed together. And I mean, look at what they built. I see so many of those examples throughout my line of work in real estate of just these small teams of guys and ladies getting together and building, businesses that are sustainable. So that's what I try to do is I just try to build a core group of people around me because it makes it feel like that team aspect. So I think, my advice is to always be confident, talk to people, because you never know who you run into. Don't be afraid to go through adversity, because adversity is just building your story and building your character. Because ultimately you're going to be 37 like I am, and you're going to be repeating the same thing to those young 18, 19-year-olds that you are now that you didn't want to hear either, because that's exactly what happened to me. So I just think, we're in a generation and we have an opportunity as young adults that have gone through the gauntlet of the high school, college sports, now transitioned it into business and things of that nature, to give back that information sooner than when we learned it. So that would be my advice for sure.
And speaking of that, are there any current projects you would like to mention before we close this episode?
Yeah, I mean, anybody in the Northern Virginia area looking for, a home, Vaughn Property Group, LLC is my own personal real estate group. Feel free to reach out to me on all the social media platforms. My handle is at Mr. Vaughn. That's MISTAH _Vaughn, VAUGHN, IG and Twitter. I'd love to help you.
All right. And finally, George Mason just recently made a hire, person we both know very well. Any special message you'd like to send out to Coach Tony Skinn?
You see, I got my Mason gear on. I mean, man, I'm just so proud of Tony. Obviously, when he was there when I got there, there was a point in time early in my freshman year where him and I were extremely close. And him and I talked about it actually at some point last summer. And I'll never forget that time. He was a mentor to me when I got there, and just to see his journey. Because he had a catastrophic injury too when he got in pro sports with his leg. But if you look at Tony's resume, obviously, Final Four and everything at Mason. He's on the Orlando Magic Summer League team. That man is an Olympian. A lot of people forget that on his resume. That man is an Olympian. To being one of the titans in college basketball, assistant coaches, to now sitting in that chair. Following sent us a picture in the chat the other day. He said, look at Tony sitting in the same chair that Coach L used to yell at his behind in. So I'm just excited for Mason Nation. Personally, he knows that, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure he's in the best position possible to succeed. Obviously, the nature of college basketball has changed. So, in my opinion, rightfully so, players are now getting paid and things of that nature. I think there's some things that we can do to kind of, hone it in a little bit, because it's like a wild, wild west out here. But, just for Tony to be in this position, man, I'm excited for him and his family. I know he is excited. He's locked in. And, I just look forward to the journey of being there and seeing him be successful. I feel like since Coach L left, we kind of went through this little turmoil of getting the right guy in there. I thought Kim English was great. He, young guy coming into the business. He brought a lot. He rejuvenated the fan base, even the alumni base. Obviously, he had an opportunity that he essentially couldn't turn down. So it was like, man, like we felt like we really had a guy in Kim, but things happen for a reason. And Tony being here, man, I'm telling you, we are excited. I got Tony here at Mason. I got my guy, Coach Caputo at GW. So I'm like, man, like I'm a little torn, but I love to see it. Obviously Coachella and BC, my guys down there at Miami. Coach Huger just got on at Temple. Coach Cherry down at Jacksonville. Coach Conkle down up at Tulsa. Coach Johnson was down at NC State last year. So just seeing so many of my guys in and throughout college basketball coaching is.
And Dwayne just got the American job too. He's a contemporary of mine.
Yeah, no, Coach Simpkins, man, he's just a good dude, man. Those kids can and will learn a lot from him, man. I'm very happy for him. He waited a long time, and I'm just so proud of him for being in a situation there, and I know he's going to do well. So I'm excited. Mason is on his way back. I can guarantee you that. My guys about to get it up and rolling. All the former guys are excited. So if you're in the Fairfax area Monday at noon, come to Tony Skinn's press conference. We'll be at Eagle Bank Arena, baby.
Okay. All right, John, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for giving me time. Thank you for your years of friendship. And thank you for your continuing support of all things with student athletes. So on behalf of my tag team partner, Coach Mike Francis, I'm Dr. Keith Adams saying thank you for listening and or watching the Odd Coaches podcast. And we will see you on the sidelines. Till next time, take care.
The Odd Coaches podcast is sponsored by the CKA Save Project. The CKA Save Project is an industry leader in providing student-athlete academic and athletic support. From assessing student-athletes' academic and athletic skills to measuring and monitoring student-athlete academic progress to improving student-athlete time management and organizational skills, the CKA Save Project provides wraparound services for student-athletes from middle school through college. For more information, visit us on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org or schedule a free consultation with Dr. Keith Adams by emailing cka@ckasaveproject.org. We hope you enjoyed today's show. The Odd Coaches podcast drops new episodes every Tuesday through Friday on most weeks. Make sure you subscribe to the Odd Coaches podcast on Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow the Odd Coaches podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Odd Coaches. Follow Dr. Adams on Twitter and Instagram at CKA Save Project. In addition, follow Coach Mike Francis on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Franchise, spelled Coach Franchize. For more information about the CKA Save Project, please visit them on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org. See you next time on the Odd Coaches Podcast.